Hi, I'm Megan O'Quinn with iCEV, and I'm going to be the host of this Pedagogy Strand workshop called Lesson Plans, Projects, and Activities, Oh My. Like I mentioned, I'm Megan O'Quinn. I'm actually the Director of Brand Management at iCEV, which means I help to oversee our content development process and work with our content development team on developing the curriculum aspects, from whether that's creating the videos and projects that are included within the lessons, or actually writing lesson plans, projects, and activities. So what I wanted to do in this presentation today is just really walk through all of the different options that you have within an iCEV lesson. So all of those different pre-made materials that you have within each lesson. So the first place I wanted to start is with this photography, capturing, and editing lesson. So we're going to go in and view the lesson. Each lesson within iCEV is going to be video or PowerPoint based, and all of the lessons are going to come with a pre-made lesson plan. So if you click on this View Lesson Plan link, it's going to take you in to view the lesson plan. So right now, this is what most of our lesson plans on iCEV look like. The first page is going to go over the goal, description, and objectives, as well as offer horizontal alignment. Or if you're in a Common Core state, we've actually gone in and added those Common Core alignments on the lesson plan as well. And then if you scroll down, we really get into where the meat of the lesson plan is, or that scope and sequence, where we break down each class and specify which of the different segments of the PowerPoint or the video go with the different projects and activities, as well as specify how long the video or PowerPoint segment is that you would be showing. And then also talk a little bit about the corresponding assessments that go with each of the different segments. Each of these classes is based on a 50-minute class period. So if you're doing block scheduling, you can just keep in mind that one class on an iCEV lesson plan equates to about 50 minutes. The lesson links area over here are just links to helpful sites that we found while creating the curriculum, or they may relate to different sources that can help you with your projects and activities within the lesson. The Career and Technical Student Organizations area goes to show which of those different CTSOs could be potentially impacted by the lesson. The Career Connections section lists any of the different career interviews which would relate to the lesson. The career interviews were conducted with different industry professionals all across the country, talking about what they do on a day-to-day basis, what different educational paths they took to where they are today, and just some general advice for students, kind of a hindsight's 2020, if you will. To find those career connections, if you go back out to your lesson page, you click on this Select Playlist drop-down menu here. You can then just click on the career interview and it would pop that up. To go back to the lesson, you just choose the lesson name from the drop-down menu. The last page of the lesson plan, or the last thing that's going to be listed, are just short descriptions of the different projects and activities that go along with the iCEV lesson. So this is a really great place to start whenever you are looking at a lesson, just so you kind of know all of the different pre-made pieces that have already been created for you. So one thing that we've actually just started and we're really excited about is we get a lot of comments back from teachers offering suggestions or things that they're needing to help them really implement the lessons to the best of their ability in their classroom. And so while this is what our current lesson plan looks like, I'm actually going to close out of this and we're going to go look at another lesson here. So we're going to look at this biosecurity and animal agriculture lesson. We're really excited to introduce and start having all of our lessons that we produce from this point forward using our new lesson plan style. And so what's going to be different on this new lesson plan, if we look at it, I'm going to make it a little bigger so it's easier to see, is we've really streamlined it and stepped it out a little more. So the first part is still going to talk about your goal, description, and objectives. Also, it's going to give you a seat time with those 5 classes or however many class periods that this particular lesson has been designed to take. And then if you scroll down, we're going to immediately get into starting off that lesson plan. So if you're still looking for the horizontal alignment or the common core pieces, if you go back out to the lesson page, beneath this printable heading, here's your common core standards and here's your horizontal alignment. So those still exist. Those are just not on the lesson plan. That's going to help cut down on the number of pages that the lesson plan is in case you're printing those out, and really just give us a little more room to really go in depth and show you all of these different step-by-step. So as you can see, if we are just looking at class 1 here, the first section is going to be a class overview. This is going to be a bulleted list of all of the different video segments or PDF documents or interactives that students will be needing to access or that you would need to gather prior to class. We've also incorporated essential questions. We've always had objectives for each of our lessons, but we've heard from a lot of our users that they wanted us to implement kind of having that essential question model so that those can be used. So those have been included on each day of teaching wherever they're relevant. The next piece is you'll see that we've really gone in and stepped out these lessons. They're going to be a more detailed daily lesson plan to help guide you through the lesson. Additionally, we've included bell ringers or short little, as soon as you get into class type of activities for your students. We've got a lot of teachers that have asked us to implement those, and so we've heard them, and now we're starting to get those implemented in all of these new lesson plans. The next piece is talking about the action plan, the vocabulary handout, and then key concepts. We'll actually, once we finish kind of looking at the lesson plan, we'll go through and look at each of those different options. It's still going to tell you which segments of the video go with which sections of the PowerPoint or with different activities and different projects. There's going to be checks for understanding, which are just going to be those short kind of right after the segment. Just make sure that the students got those basic concepts nailed down for each segment after they've watched them. And then the other piece that's been added are exit tickets. And so those are just little short activities that students can do or checkpoints that they should complete prior to leaving class. And so each of the class periods is going to be laid out the exact same way, stepped out with all of the different icons that go with the different pieces. So this is your video icon, so you know this is a video segment. It'll be the project icon, so you know you're looking for a project. The bell ringer icon. One thing that's really we've added is this little interactive icon. And what the interactive icon means, if it shows up next to something, is that that actually is an interactive activity with an iCEV. So what that means is if you look under that interactive activities heading out here, we're going to close the printable and open the interactive. Those are what are going to be self-graded for you by iCEV, so that the students can complete those within their student login, and then those, as soon as they're complete, are graded by iCEV. So anything in the lesson plan that's got this little yellow eye next to it is going to be interactive. The last piece that's a little different is we still have the descriptions of the activities or projects, but to help better meet the needs of some of your special population students, we're actually providing samples of what a modification or extension or an accommodation, if needed, could be for the different projects and activities. So that should be really helpful when you're trying to help plan for your special population within your classes. And those are going to appear in the descriptions for each of the projects or activities. The next piece that we've added, which will be really helpful from a remote learning standpoint, is if we look underneath this printable heading, we're going to have action plans. And what you can think of an action plan as is just a student version of the lesson plan that can be used to provide students with a daily list of tasks. So as you can see, this looks very similar to the lesson plan that we just looked at. It's going to clearly define the objectives, as well as provide essential questions for what the student's going to be learning within that particular class period. The exact same layout in terms of it being very stepped out and then offering further directions for each of the different pieces of the curriculum that they're supposed to use for their learning objectives. Also, that little yellow eye icon appears again, letting them know that this particular check for understanding is interactive, and so they could complete that through their student license and go look for it underneath those interactive activities. So again, this is just a student version of the lesson plan called the action plan. These have been already implemented in some areas of our curriculum, but moving forward, they're going to be with every single lesson. The next piece that we can go and look at that's new are these key concepts. And what key concepts are is just a new and improved way of making sure that the main ideas of a lesson are explained to the student. This is actually going to replace, if you're familiar with our student notes, teacher notes, or the worksheets that accompany videos. So the key concepts are going to be used in replacing those. One thing to keep in mind is these are created using the Cornell note-taking method. So it'll be a really great way for students to learn what a good set of notes should look like. And then also what they're going to be doing. So this is the answer key for this particular key concept. It's a PDF. We go and we look at the student version of that. There's going to be blanks that they fill in. So still following that worksheet or the student notes model, but really testing and making sure that students understand those main ideas within the actual segment of the lesson that they're looking at. One thing to keep in mind about the key concepts is while you do have the printable version of them, I'm going to close those just to kind of stay organized. We scroll down and look underneath our interactive heading. There's also the option to have the students do those interactively. And again, anything that is interactive means that it's going to automatically be graded for you on iCEV. The next piece that I want to talk about is something that we've always had, and we're just kind of rebranding how we're talking about our assessment pieces. And so the end of the segment assessments are just going to be short check for understandings. And so what that means is they're just going to be a short review of the concepts and skills learned in each step of the lesson. Those are going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 questions that really just hit on those main topics and make sure students have had good takeaways from each of those to, again, just for lack of a better way of putting it, check their understanding of the material. Just kind of end of segment check-ins. And then whenever we look at our final assessment, to help increase the rigor of these, we've actually gone in, and these are going to be much more in-depth, longer, more rigorous, and make sure that the student really has mastery of the content and use a variety of different question types. So as you can see, there's many different questions that are within here, lots of different scenario-based, more critical thinking options that they would have to be using to complete this 15-question final assessment. Most of the final assessments will range from 15 to 25 questions, most of them falling in there at that 20-question threshold. So those are a lot of the different components that we have that make up this new lesson plan piece. And so we're really excited to release that. We have taken a lot of different teacher feedback to get us to this point. And so be sure to just kind of keep a lookout for those new lesson plans showing up with any of the new lessons that are added within iCEV. So the next piece that I kind of wanted to just touch on was how to actually go in and scaffold a project. So if we go back to, I'm going to look at this photography capturing and editing lesson. I've opened one of the projects that's in there that's called photojournalism. And so if we were talking about scaffolding projects, what we're really talking about is breaking up or chunking the material into more manageable pieces. Often each chunk is going to focus on teaching a very specific skill. It can be as simple as reviewing vocabulary, discussing the purpose, or identifying different techniques used within the project. One thing that's great about scaffolding any iCEV projects is that they all come with step-by-step instructions. So you can simply give the instructions to the students and then let them get started, but you can easily implement scaffolding. So for example, within this particular project, students are creating a visual story. And step 1 is having them select the subject for their project. The instructions are stating that they should consider something which impacts themselves or their lives. And so they could take some time during this step to have students brainstorm the most important things in their lives, and then have them identify why those things are important. And so, for instance, if a student says food is really important because it's the period before lunch and he's hungry, make sure you have him identify why food is so important. Does food play a vital role, I mean, aside from the obvious, in their life? Or is it just simply what's on his mind at this time? By doing this at this step, students are going to eliminate steps or eliminate different subjects which are not impactful. Step 2 and 3 are centered around taking 100 different photos. And step 4 has students narrow those photos down to 20. Scaffolding in this step might include having students share their photos with a partner or group, and then having the group help decide which the best ones are. By doing this, you're ensuring that, 1, the students take a look at all of the 100 photos, and 2, students are typically, just like we are, a little overcritical of their own work. And by allowing their peers to assess these photos, it's going to help them really narrow down the best ones and helps boost some self-confidence and self-esteem. Then in step 5, when they start editing the photos, and students should pick a couple of those photos and explain their reasoning behind their editing of those. Is it simply to remove a misplaced hair on their friend's face? Or does making it black and white make it tell a different story than when the photo is in color? So that would be an example of how you could scaffold that step out. It also, if you did that with that particular step, would allow students to experiment with various editing techniques and really identify what they want to say within their photo story. Those are just a few simple scaffolding examples of that you could use within this particular project. Really, when you're talking about scaffolding, it's important because it helps reiterate the purpose behind each step. And it also allows you the opportunity to work with students one-on-one or in small groups and provide any additional support that those students may find necessary. So that's just a way that you could implement scaffolding within one of the iCEV projects. But like I mentioned, all iCEV projects or even activities are stepped out. So you could really go in there and scaffold as many or as few of those steps as you felt you needed to within a project or an activity. The last piece that I wanted to mention is the create your own assessment piece. So I'm actually going to go into a different course here, and we're just going to really quickly touch on this. If you wanted to create your own assessment based on the different interactive activities or assessments or tech for understandings that are within a course, you could just click on this create assessment link here. So if you click on that, you could title your assessment. So this is great if you wanted to do a 6 weeks test. So we could choose that. And let's just say you've got through these first few lessons here. We're going to scroll down to the bottom again and click next. So then it's going to pull all of the different lessons, and we just need to click that we want to find those items. And so now it's pulled all of the different interactive pieces, whether that's an interactive vocabulary term, an activity, an assessment, question, anything that relates to that. You can preview what those look like by clicking on the little eye icon here. And if it's a question you do want to add, just click on the checkbox and check it. So I'm just going to go through and check a few things here so that we have some different options. And as soon as I'm done checking the ones I want, you just go here and click on add. You also have the option that if you wanted to look for assessment questions, you could just type in assess, and then it's going to pull up the different questions based on what search term you did. So let's add a couple more items here. And then once we've got everything added, we'll click on back. And so here's the ones that we've selected. And then we're going to do save. And if we go back now to our course page and scroll down to the bottom, you can see that we've added our own custom test. And then if we click on the 6 weeks test, it's actually going to go through and show you that assessment you made and all of the different questions. One thing to note is once you do add one of those tests, be sure to uncheck the visible to students checkbox, or they're going to automatically see that on their student license. So those are just a few of the different lesson plans, projects, and activity updates, as well as the create your own assessment feature that I wanted to show off within this particular segment.